My husband had a second family for 6 years. I found out by accident. Then I waited 4 months to make my move. I found out on a Sunday morning in April, completely by accident, while I was looking for a phone charger. What I found instead was a second phone. And on that phone was a second life, a second woman, a second apartment, and a child who was almost 4 years old and had my husband's eyes. I stood in our bedroom holding that phone for a long time. Then I put it back exactly where I found it. I didn't say a word. And I spent the next 4 months making sure that when I finally did say something, he had absolutely nowhere to go. My name is Nina. I'm 38. Was married to a man named Greg for 9 years. We met at a work conference in Boston. Both of us in finance. Both of us the kind of people who made spreadsheets for fun and thought that was a personality. We were good together in the practical, efficient way that two organized people are good together. We bought a house in Connecticut. We had a plan for kids that kept getting pushed back by careers and timing, and then quietly stopped being discussed at all. We had a life that looked, from the outside, like something worth envying. Greg traveled for work. A lot. 2, sometimes 3 weeks a month, mostly to Chicago, where his firm's largest client was based. I never questioned it. It was his job. It had always been his job. The travel was part of the thing we'd signed up for, and I'd made my peace with it years ago. I want to tell you there were signs I missed. I've looked back hard for them, and I found a few things I could reframe in hindsight, a vagueness here, a redirected question there, but nothing that would have made me suspicious in real time. He was not careless. He was not sloppy. He had been doing this for 6 years, and he was very, very good at it. That is his own particular kind of thing to reckon with. It was a Sunday. Greg was still asleep. I needed a charger for my laptop, and I knew he kept a bag of cables and adapters in the drawer on his side of the bed. The kind of drawer that accumulates everything with no organizational logic. Just a graveyard of tech accessories and old receipts and expired coupons. I was not looking for anything. I want to be absolutely clear about that. I was looking for a USB-C cable at 8 a.m. on a Sunday while my husband slept 6 feet away. It was at the back of the drawer, under a tangle of cables. A phone. Not his regular phone. I knew his regular phone. A black iPhone that was always face down on his nightstand. This was a different model. Older. In a plain gray case. I picked it up because I thought it might be a work device I'd forgotten about. It wasn't password protected. That detail has stayed with me. The fact that he hadn't bothered to put a password on it. Either he was that confident it would never be found, or some part of him had stopped caring about the precaution. I don't know which. The screen lit up with messages. I looked at them, the way you look at something your brain is refusing to process. Seeing the words, understanding each one individually, unable to make them add up to what they were adding up to. Her name was Lauren. The messages were ordinary in the way that messages between two people who share a life are ordinary. What do you want for dinner? Can you pick up the dry cleaning? Mia had a good day at preschool. Mia. A name I had never heard. I went to the photos. There she was, a little girl, almost 4, with Greg's dark eyes and her mother's nose, grinning at the camera with the complete unself-consciousness of a child who has no idea her existence is a secret. I stood there for what felt like a long time, but was probably 90 seconds. Then I put the phone back, exactly as I found it, under the same cables, at the same angle. I took the USB-C adapter I'd come for. I went downstairs. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, and I drank it while Greg slept upstairs, and I thought about what I was going to do. Not what I was going to say, what I was going to do. Those are very different questions. I called my sister that afternoon while Greg was at the gym. Her name is Paula, and she is the only person I trusted completely with this. And the reason I called her first is that Paula is a divorce attorney. Not a coincidence that that's who I called. When the world falls apart, you call the person most equipped to help you rebuild it on your terms. Paula listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Don't touch anything. Don't move anything. Don't change your behavior at all. And come see me this week." I went to see her on Tuesday. We spent 3 hours going through everything. What I'd seen, what it meant legally, what my options were, what I needed to document before I did anything that would alert Greg that I knew. Paula had handled cases like this before. She knew exactly what a betrayed spouse needed and exactly what a man like Greg would try to do when confronted without warning versus confronted with an airtight case. "The house is in both names," she said. "His income is joint marital income. You have been supporting his career for 9 years. You're entitled to a significant portion of everything, but only if you handle this correctly." I asked what correctly looked like. She told me. For the next 4 months, I was the best wife Greg had ever had. I am not being dramatic. I cooked dinners I didn't feel like cooking. I asked about his trips with interest I didn't feel. I laughed at his jokes. I went to his firm's summer party and made conversation with his colleagues and smiled so consistently that my face hurt on the drive home. I was warm and present and completely, perfectly normal. And while I was being perfectly normal on the surface, underneath, I was building a case that would have impressed Paula's most thorough paralegal. I documented everything. I took photos of the second phone whenever I had access to the drawer. Careful, quick, replacing it exactly. I noted the dates Greg said he was in Chicago and cross-referenced them against flight records Paula helped me obtain through proper legal channels. I found the Chicago apartment. It was leased in Greg's name, a detail he had apparently felt safe enough to not bother concealing. Because why would he? His wife in Connecticut had no reason to ever look. I found the lease through a property record search that is entirely public information if you know how to look, which Paula did. I opened a personal bank account, something I hadn't had in 9 years of joint finances, and I began moving money into it, not hiding it, not doing anything that would constitute financial misconduct. Paula was very clear about that line. Just establishing my own financial footing so that when the moment came, I was not dependent on a man who had been lying to me for 6 years to fund the next chapter of my life. Greg noticed nothing. I think about that sometimes. 9 years of marriage, and he couldn't tell the difference between the woman who loved him and the woman who was methodically, patiently, taking apart everything he'd built. I chose a Thursday in August. Greg was leaving the next morning for what he said was a 4-day Chicago trip. I had confirmed, through means I won't detail because Paula told me not to, that it was not a work trip. I had everything I needed. I had the documentation, the legal advice, the financial foundation, and 4 months of cold, clear certainty that I was doing this correctly. We had dinner. Normal dinner. I'd made the pasta he liked, which I recognize in retrospect was perhaps an unnecessarily theatrical touch. But I'd committed to the performance, and I was seeing it through. After dinner, I put a folder on the table between us. He looked at it, then at me. He said, "What's this?" I said, "It's a summary of what I know and what I've documented over the past 4 months. There's a copy with my attorney. There's a copy in a location you don't know about. And this copy is for you, so you understand exactly where we are before you say anything." The color left his face completely. I watched it happen. That specific draining, that moment when someone realizes the ground they thought was solid has been gone for a long time and they're only now feeling the drop. He started to say something. I held up one hand. "Read it first," I said. "Then we can talk." He read it. It took about 12 minutes. I sat across from him and drank my water and waited. When he finished, he looked up and he said, "Nina?" I said, "I know about Lauren. I know about Mia. I know about the apartment on Dearborn Street. I know about the account you've been using that isn't our joint account. I know all of it, Greg. I've known since April. And I've spent 4 months making sure that you cannot dispute any of it and cannot maneuver around any of it because Paula has been very thorough." He said my sister's name like a question, like he was just now understanding the shape of what had happened. I said, "She says hello." There was a long silence. Then he said, very quietly, "What do you want?" And I told him exactly what I wanted, in detail, because I'd had 4 months to figure it out. The divorce took 8 months. Greg did not contest the terms. Paula had been right that a documented case left very little room for maneuvering. I got the house, which I subsequently sold because I didn't want to live in it. I got a settlement that reflected 9 years of a marriage in which my earning potential had been secondary to his career by mutual agreement that was now significantly less mutual feeling. I got, in other words, what I was entitled to. Greg moved to Chicago. I don't know the details of what happened with Lauren and Mia, and I have made a decision not to seek them out. That is a separate situation involving people who didn't choose to be in it, and it's not mine to involve myself in. Paula and I had dinner to celebrate the finalization. She ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu and said it was on her, which is the most generous thing a divorce attorney can offer a client, and I accepted it without argument. I moved to a smaller place in a different town, just mine. I chose every piece of furniture in it, and I arranged them the way I wanted, and there is nobody's opinion to factor in but my own, which I am still getting used to, and which I am finding, slowly and somewhat surprisingly, to be one of the better things about my life right now. I went back to work full-time. I've been part-time for the last few years, Another mutual agreement that looked different in retrospect. Within 6 months, I'd been promoted. Turns out I'm quite good at finance when I'm applying it entirely to my own interests. I think about the Sunday morning in April sometimes, the drawer, the charger I was actually looking for, the 90 seconds between finding the phone and deciding to put it back. A different version of me might have woken him up right then, might have thrown the phone across the room, demanded answers, made a scene that felt satisfying for about 40 seconds, and then handed him all the power for everything that came after. I didn't do that. I put the phone back, and I made coffee, and I thought about what I was going to do, not what I was going to say. That distinction between doing and saying is the thing I'd tell anyone in that situation. The feelings are real, and they deserve to exist, but the moment is not the time for them. The moment is for thinking clearly about what comes next and how to get there on your own terms. I got there on my own terms. And that, more than anything else about this story, is the part I'm proud of. If you made it to the end of this one, thank you. This story is for everyone who ever chose to think before they reacted, even when everything in them wanted to do the opposite. That's one of the hardest things a person can do. Drop a like if this hit different, subscribe if you want more, and I'll see you in the next one.